Nobody actually thought about that until way after. But did they not think about it? Or was it always a part of the agenda? If you don't have any fuel, you don't have any gas, you don't have any ammonia or fertilizer, that means that you haven't planted produce. And so if you don't see the impact on Africa, that's by design.
When a war breaks out halfway across the world, do you think about fertilizer? Do you think about next season's harvest?
Lulite Ejigu does. She's the CEO of Tevah Capital, an author, and one of the sharpest strategists working on Africa's economic rise.
And she says the invisibility of Africa's suffering is not an accident, it's a strategy.
On the AGI Podcast.
What is your reflection on the chaos happening in the world?
Well, one, it's organized chaos. A lot of times whenever there's a conflict or crisis or something that people think of as a disaster, it's not always as sudden as people think it is. It's something that's been building for quite some time.
What does it take to someone from the US to care about Africa, to care about Ethiopia, and analyze issues within the continent and write a book?
It's actually a challenging question for me because I didn't write the book to be an African book. So I didn't want it to be when you walk into the bookstore, if you write a book that's on Africa, it's particularly in the little Africa, they have a little one bookshelf of all the African books. And who goes there? The people who are specifically wanting to read a book on Africa, right?
Yeah.
Well, this wasn't a book on Africa. This was a global book.
How long do you think will Africa remain invisible? How long has it been? It's been a year or something?
I think a year, yeah, probably.
Yeah. We mostly talked about diaspora, first generation, second generation, and things of that nature.
Yeah.
But today's world has changed a lot after our conversation.
Yeah.
A lot happened in the Middle East, and that affected the lives of people living everywhere in the world. Apparently, people living in Africa are affected the same way that people are affected in the northern part of America or some other places in the world. So, welcome to the show, first of all. And what is your reflection on the chaos happening in the world? Tell me about that.
Well, one, it's organized chaos.
All right.
So I would say it's, I think a lot of times whenever there's I would call it a conflict or a crisis or something that people think of as a disaster. It's not always as sudden as people think it is. It's something that's been building for quite some time. Many people say that a lot of this, World War III pieces are really something that started years and years ago. Especially we could see the remnants of that with the Ukraine and Russia conflict. That was kind of brewing, and I mean that might have been manufactured as well. But I think in general, I think the global conflict, regional conflicts are things that are by design. There is a function, there's a goal behind war. It's not so, oh my God, this happened and it just kind of came out of thin air. It's people just think, oh, hostilities just grew and then we just ended up here. It's no, there was people that got in a room, decided that, conflict was better than peace, and or it was a part of a business deal or some type of function. And as ugly as it is to say that, it is kind of the truth. So, one thing I would just say in general is no matter what's going on, this global war, the constant global war, whether it's this conflict, many others before this one. Some get more attention because of who's involved. Some don't get any attention at all, but they all have a local and a global impact and a local and global strategy.
Great. We talked about Asia in a way, and there is Europe coming in the conversation because it is affected somehow was everything happening in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And we mentioned Latin America was Venezuela, but we never talk about Africa. I mean, we're being affected maybe most. Already a poor continent, people not getting their subsistence life in a proper order. You see the news or you read anything, the effect that it brings on Africa is never seen.
Yeah.
What is happening there?
Yeah. I call it like the invisible war, you know, that invisible global war that it's like the largest impacts are really invisible because no one goes back and calculates when, you had the Ukraine-Russia conflict and what that did to like wheat and food resources around the world. Nobody like actually thought about that till like way after. But did they not think about it? Or was it always a part of the agenda and the strategy? So I think the people who are very aware and making the decisions and the conflict and the global economic players are very much aware of resources and how that trickles down, how that impacts different populations. And it's a global invisible war. It's not a war that's happening in Iran or UAE or Israel or Lebanon, for that matter. It is, and there's very real lives being impacted. A lot of things that are honestly very painful to see, very painful to talk about, very painful to admit to. And it creates a sense of, powerlessness. And I also feel like that's the goal. I know I'm not saying that to be like I'm not saying that to be like negative or, like a conspiracy theorist. But I will say that like, you have to kind of ask yourself, when someone or some institution or some force constantly are promoting like things that brings you into like fear or like, powerlessness, frozen, then that's probably by design. A lot of times I look at a lot of the movies and kind of like what we see online, much more gruesome things, much more R-rated scenes, like way more than before. Is that really just because we got like, is our culture just more like less religious, or is it more secular? Is that really what it is? Or is it really like, it's a part of the programming as well. So I think that comes with conflict. And I think that, in every aspect. So if that's true in media, then it has to be true in war. It has to be true in economics. It has to be true in resource distribution. It has to be true in what you don't see. And so if you don't see the impact on Africa, that's by design. And I think that it's also because the less aware a community is, the less prepared a community is, and the less of a nuisance a community can be. I mean, the less they can get in your way. So the more conscious you are, the more aware you are, the more you can take action, mitigate. It's kind of like, if you're, doing risk, right? We talk about risk a lot, at least I do because I, specialize in risk strategy. You don't know how to mitigate your risks if you don't know what your risks are. So if you're too in fear to look at the problems and you're too powerless or too frozen to view them, then you don't know how to combat them, what you can do. And I think a lot of times in areas where you're like, oh, this has nothing to do with us, but we're affected by it. I mean, isn't that like the story of Africa? And especially with every recent global issue, it's never, oh, well, this is happening there. No, it's like, this is what happened and this is how it's impacting us. I think that America is just now feeling that. I very shielded because the U.S. is very resource rich, not just financially, institutionally, but also just energy, electricity, food, There's the commercial agriculture could feed nations. I mean, the amount of harvest waste, food waste. I mean, it's so large. It's astronomical. The amount of food we throw. We don't even have enough processing to manage the amount of food we throw away every year. I mean, it's like that is our problem is not having enough food. Our problem is not being able to process the amount of food we throw away. I mean, that's like a real truth. And there's people starving in the same country. In the same country where we don't know how to manage our food waste, and we're putting up crazy systems just to be able to process all this food we throw away. There's also rules that the restaurants can't give that food to the homeless. There's all these barriers to like helping the needy and people who are on this street who are starving, and they're throwing the food in the trash in the back of the restaurant. So that's a real reality. And I think that the U.S., we're fortunate in many ways that we don't feel the instantaneous changes that happen across the globe. And when we do, you hear us, we're loud, right? The conflict in the Middle East happened right now with Iran and Israel and Lebanon, and obviously in Palestine has been going on for quite some time now. So the regional issues, of course, have been picking up over the past year, and has aggravated in the past several months. And that's usually felt immediately. And in emerging countries, especially like in Ethiopia, you're going to see that really quickly, coming and seeing all the cars parked on the street, and being told that those cars have been parked there for a couple of days. So it's not always what you see. Just like in the conflict, you see those conflicts in the Middle East, you see people dying, you see the devastation, the economic devastation, you see like the physical building devastation, and you're like, whoa, that's really bad. Just same thing, like if you come to Ethiopia, first thing you're going to see there's no fuel, right? But you don't see we were in this interview and we started and then the lights went out. We got to wait for the lights to come back on, And so, but we don't think about the invisible people that are in the hospital that are, connected to a life-saving machine, and what that means for them, what the shortage of oil, the shortage of gas production in the Middle East, what that means for the ammonia, which then produces the fertilizer, which allows our farmers to grow the produce they need for the population which we have. And for large populations, similar to like Ethiopia, if you don't have any fuel, you don't have any gas, you don't have any ammonia or fertilizer, that means that you haven't planted, produce in a season, which is, obviously harvest season or rainy season, like we're coming up on now. You don't have enough. So then 3-4 months down the road, you have to think about, how do we prepare for that? How do we sustain ourselves? And the beautiful thing about this population, I would say the invisible population of these global wars and these global conflicts around the world, or disasters, or these things that we say we have no control over, right? Is that they're more resilient too. So, in the US, when it was COVID and other things like that, the biggest issue was like toilet paper. Everyone was all over every store, and everyone was stealing all the toilet paper. I mean, I can't even imagine that being a thing in Ethiopia. It's the type of people that take some kolo and water and go out and be fine and be hungry.
Sure. But how long do you think will Africa remain being invisible? And the other thing is, when people talk about problems in the show and in other places, having discussions like this, people tell you this and that is happening to some country and even a continent, and this guy is doing this and that, this president is saying this and that. And what always comes into my mind is, so what's the solution? How do we deal with it? It seems like for Africa, for the continent, asking this kind of questions is somehow, I don't know, irrelevant maybe, because if you're already invisible and whatever you think should be the solution, I don't think can bring anything, because the resources on the other side of the world or the Atlantic, and I see how it makes you feel powerless. But do you think there is anything that we can do as a continent?
Yeah, I think with every conflict or every sudden change or shift, it's really about who shifts with what's happening. I think that, in the context of Ethiopia or Africa, is what I will say is COVID, there was a shift, right? It was, okay, you couldn't move around as much, you couldn't be as flexible as much. And so it requires to build local production, local interconnectivity, infrastructure, and things of that sort. And also, how does a community like that present itself globally? I mean, Ethiopian Airlines was the only airlines that was still actually shipping to and from Wuhan in the world. The only airlines that didn't shut down. And why is that? It's kind of an extension of the culture, right? It's like an extension of resiliency, an extension of, we're going to keep going. I think many people might look at it from like a negative perspective, like, oh, they should have stopped. The question really is what you do in the face of adversity, the face of, when things are not so popular. It really speaks a lot about the culture and the fabric of the society. And I think that that's really where the U.S. got where it is today. Because it did the uncommon, it did the things that weren't done before. It pushed the barrier. I mean, Venezuela was a push of the barrier, right? It's not internationally common where you pick somebody up, like pick up a leader like in the middle of the night from his house. Like, what was he in his pajamas? Like, he's gonna pick up a world leader by the pajamas. I mean, it's not common. It's not common practice. But regardless on what you believe, whether you think that that's bad or good or whatever, I'm not judging the action. What I'm talking more about is being unprecedented and understanding that sometimes the most important decisions and the most important leadership are going to be the most judged. That doesn't mean that it's good or bad. It just means that it's going to happen no matter what, because you're going to be making decisions that may be popular, and you're going to be making decisions that are unpopular, right? And regardless of that, it's about making the decisions, and it's about being resilient, and it's about not wondering, is this going to be popular or not, right? Because those decisions are going to be what's going to shape the society. And the idea is that you want to be doing that for good. You want to be taking those uncommon decisions for good, right? And for good meaning for the goodness of people, for the goodness or the benefit of a community, of a society. And that's political, and that's ugly, and that's not always great. And people are not going to always give you the applause for it. But that's leadership. And I think that there was a huge leadership shown in continuing to show up for Wuhan at the time and continuing to show up for the world, because everything was coming out of China. A lot of things were coming out of China at the time. And a lot of businesses, even in the US, failed during that time because they couldn't get shipments. So I think that institutions, whether it's governments or institutions, play that role and have to make that kind of like decision. And it's not popular, it's not easy, but someone's got to do it. And it's it's a hard place and a hard seat to sit in. But I definitely honor and respect people who can make those hard decisions, whether I agree with them or not. There's things that I agree in with all leadership, and there's things that I don't agree with. It doesn't mean that I dislike the leader. It just means that they're hard decisions to make. And communities are large, and sometimes when one community gains, another hurts. And that's just the truth of it. And I think that it's not fair to say it any other way. And I think that people are being honest. They know that, okay, if my tribe wins, maybe another tribe loses. You know, if my family benefits, maybe another family has to do without. You know, if I get gas at the gas station, the next car does not. Because that's resources and that's global trade and that's how things run. And the reason why I say that the invisibility matters, it's not just always from a negative place. It's like, okay, do we want to be seen? Yeah, maybe sometimes. Sometimes there's a lot of power in not being seen, you know? And I would say that with the Ukraine, when a lot of that wheat was not flowing to and from the region, Ethiopia decided to do a lot of commercial agriculture, you know, building up flour and wheat and commercial institutions to do the agro processing and to be able to, why so much land, so much ability, so many farmers here in the country, why not do that? And I think that it's that quick import, and then something happens that says, wait a minute, like we need to be able to not be in a situation again. And then guess what? So that invisibility, that something, that suddenness, in the long run, did it hurt Ethiopia? Did it help Ethiopia?
All right.
It probably
Okay.
did, right? Because it changed the sector, it changed our capacity to produce for ourselves. And I think the same thing will happen with this conflict. When you're in it, you don't necessarily see it, but you'll see a lot of shifts that will come out of this. I don't think that the urban centers like you've seen before are going to continue to be that way in the next 3 to 5 years. We're going to have to build more cities. We're going to have to go back more fragmented, go back more into the rural area where it's not like you have to come, everyone has to come to Addis to gain something. It's not sustainable. It's just not, it's not sustainable. And I think that every big nation needs to have vibrant, multiple urban centers. And you've seen this, I think, with the tourism and the resorts and the projects that are kind of happening throughout the country. But I think you're going to see that more in like fragmented trade and like being able to like do businesses where they are and not having to come into an urban center like Addis or like major cities to be able to do that. And I think same is true in the US and other places. You know, I'm not familiar with every other place in the world, but I think that's going to be important because you're not going to have the fuel, you're not going to have the resources, and you want to mitigate that dependency. Not saying that we're not going to stop using gas, we're not going to stop needing, no, energy fuels everything. And it fuels a lot more than just the oil. It fuels lives, like we said, in hospitals, it fuels food. You know, that's a big important thing, you know, and I think this is why a lot of people are talking about shortage of food, famine, and all those other things. It's not to make people scared, but it's to say, hey, this is coming. How do we prepare for it? Yeah.
It's going to be really, I mean, I don't know, conventional to ask this question, but I have to ask it.
Okay.
Should we matter? Like, should Africa be considered and talked about in the lens of what is happening in the Middle East? Because what do we contribute? What are we? I mean, for some people, it could be a continent that only receives from Europe or America. Of course, we are here. We live in the continent. We have the 1 point some billion population that was in the continent. But still, when we talk about the Middle East and other countries that are playing around that area, they have a stake. They have resources, they have knowledge, they have other things to care about, and they contributed toward making what is happening in that area matter, big or small. But why do Africa matter? Why should we talk about Africa even?
I think something really funny about what you said. He said, like, you know, Africa just receives.
Yeah.
Which is so funny because the exact opposite is true, right? Because Africa is resourcing the whole world, right? You talk about like Swiss chocolate. Does Swiss actually grow chocolate? Do they grow cocoa? No, right? Like comes from West Africa.
All right.
Right. So it's like, you know, I think a lot of these things are like misnomers. And when we talk about invisibility or talk about mattering, is that more of like a storyline or is it really the truth? You know, so I think that the big part of like I said, a lot of these things are by design is because if you knew that you were actually giving, like the continent that was actually giving more than it was receiving, how would you feel about that? What would be your positioning, right? It's kind of like you go somewhere and you're like giving to somebody who needs it, right? You're the person who's more fortunate. You're the person who's more abundant.
Yeah.
You know, a guy told me, he said, you know, Africa is the only place, you know, where people walk on the land, walk on gold, and think that they're poor. You know, and I don't even know if we talked about that last time I was here.
We didn't.
But I just remember saying that. I remember hearing him say this American guy. He's like, Africa's the only place in the world where people walk on gold and say they're poor. So it's a perspective, completely a perspective. It's like, how do I take these resources and make these resources work for me? And it's about building value chain, building interconnectivity. Why does everyone create like their businesses in Africa to attract the Western market, Western consumers? Why not Kenyan consumers? Why not Ugandan consumers? What's the difference really? There's no difference. Why is it just as hard to get like a visa in another African country within Africa? A lot of people have to fly out of the continent to Europe to get back into the continent. That's wild. Why is that? It's because of a perspective of needing something outside of yourself. It's like same thing. I think it's like a personal story too. If you need something from someone else, people can feel that energy, right? It's like you're taking from them. Like if I need attention from you, like, you know, like say, you know, we're at a cafe and I'm like trying to tell you a story and you're like not paying attention. You're like looking away. And I'm like trying to get your attention, or like, you know, like a little child is like trying to get their dad's attention, right? It's like, it's like you're kind of like looking the other way. You know, you're needy.
Yeah.
You know, so that energetically you're not understanding that it's already within yourself. Like all the attention and all the love and all the resources already within you. You know, as an individual, right? Like you're the one who has to love yourself in order to receive love from someone else, right? How's someone going to come and love you without you building yourself up, without you knowing your own worth and your own value? It can't come from outside of you. And it's the same thing from the continent. The value has to come from within the continent. Like how does East Africa within the region itself, how does neighbors value each other, right? Do you value each other? Do you value another African native from another country investing in your country just as much as you would value it from a European investor or a Western US investor? Would you? And the question is no.
Yeah.
And there's a perception that automatically that Western investor may be more experienced, might have more access to cash, might have more access to customers. Just an automatic experience. So this is everything in life. I believe truly is a reflection of itself. Just like I think war, say, oh, like this person or this leader did this and is such a horrible leader, and really, or are they just reflecting exactly the spirit of the nation? What are they reflecting? Same thing as like if you go to a church, if you go to a family, they're really reflecting each other. Is it truly just the head of the household? Or is it everyone in the home that's really mirroring that behavior to each other? And that's really kind of what I think communities are. And I think those communities then build nations and continents and so forth, people. A global people. And that's kind of how I see it. It's a global people. So I think everything that we see is a symptom. It's not the cause. It's not the root. So if we believe that we need to hurt each other and kill each other, that means that there's something that within ourselves that's making us believe that's the only option. We feel guilty. We feel like we're not enough.
Yeah.
We feel like we need to be tortured or disciplined in some way. And I know that these are like higher level concepts, and I'm not saying that to dismiss anything that's going on, but more so to have awareness of like what we're seeing and why we're seeing these things. It's greed and selfishness, like unchecked, it's not a one person thing,
Absolutely.
you know?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like when people say, oh, like, you know, this is the president, this is the PM, and this is what things don't run by one person. We like to believe it is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But there's an influence, right? Just like there's a local influence, there's a global influence. You know, every leader has to be impacted by a leader across the ocean. There's no such thing as someone sitting in a seat of leadership and not being impacted by a U.S. leader, a European leader. There's no such thing, right? So sometimes a leader, you might not like an idea or something that they do, but they're not necessarily doing it because they want to, but they're maybe doing it because of an influence that's outside of themselves, or an influence or an awareness of something that we may not see, right? So it's like you kind of have to have grace, and you kind of have to have an awareness that I'm seeing this from my viewpoint, like my small box and perspective. And tomorrow I might have another view and another view and another view the day after and the week after. And that's why I always like allow people to be who they are and to change and evolve, because I can't be the last version of myself, because I can't say I have to have learned more this year than I did last year. So how can I be the same? How can my viewpoints be the same? You know?
Great.
And we were talking about that, I think, the other day in the restaurant.
Yeah.
You were like, okay, I'm not talking to Lulite anymore because this is wild. And we went to a whole different, I'm not going to talk about it on this podcast, guys, because it's not for TV or YouTube.
Right.
But, you know, it's that aspect that, like, you know, we need to sometimes have grace for one another and understand that, like, we're all going through this life journey and we're doing the best we can. And sometimes I might have to go through something that might be more difficult for you. You're like, hey, that's easy. Why can't you just turn this off or turn that emotion off or go this direction? Well, that's my life journey and my life path. And I had to learn something from that path that God has already destined me to walk through. And there's somebody that I am going to impact or help by me walking through that path. There's a destiny, a path forward that it's already been written, you know? And because it's already been written doesn't mean that it's not evolving, because it's also happening at the same time, because universally there is no time. So we're shaping and forming ourselves every minute, every second. And the super key to that is just being present. Like not being so much in fear in the future and not focusing so much on where we've only been, but knowing that everything is being created right now, and to be hyper vigilant and honestly unplug from the news. Like I advise everyone I know to not watch the news. I get most of my news just by hearing people giving me random updates, but I won't sit in front of a screen and watch news because I do not want to be programmed to a specific view. And that's what I think news is now. It gives a perception that you're being informed, but really you're being programmed to see something, see the storyline from one perspective. So
Sure.
yeah.
But I like the part about Africa and how you corrected the view I have of Africa receiving instead of giving, and from the resource point
I
of
mean,
view.
like look at France,
Yeah, definitely.
right?
Yeah.
A lot of countries have like kicked France out,
Yeah.
and their economy's not doing so great.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think it's invisible for a reason. Because if you recognize your true power and your impact on the communities in which you covet, these European or American or whatever communities that you're coveting them because you're putting them on a pedestal. So just like we talked about last time on celebrities in Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
You put something up there, right? The whole system operates because you put them up there. If you don't put them up there, then the whole it's like a Lego building, right? It's like if you knock one block down, the whole thing crumbles, right? So the invisibility is a part of the strategy.
Yeah.
You know?
But I need you to
Yeah.
go deeper and mention you broke about this area, and let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Especially the financial aspect of it and the economy of the continent and how the future is unfolding for Africa. Mention all those things. I love talking about Africa a lot, but today I have to talk about it with you, especially because of the book and the ideas you have of Africa. Is not the same with most Ethiopians or most Africans I meet. Go ahead.
I think, let's say it like this. It's like, you ever see those like people who do those like magic tricks? Okay. So the magic tricks, what they normally do is like an art of distraction. So they'll be like, here. So you're like looking at my hand, right? And then over here, I'm doing something else. So that's how I think of like the global economy. It's all one big distraction scheme. Look over here. Everyone, see, you keep looking at my hand. So it's like one big distraction scheme. And the goal is to get you to look at this little fancy show, the Hollywood, the war, the conflict, the fear, the insecurity. Oh, you're invisible. Now make yourself more seen. Okay. The art and the beauty is of the hand that's here under the table, the one that you can't see, the invisibility. A lot of times, I like to talk about King David, Dawit. And I think his story is really cool because when King David came to power, he had spent like 12 years like playing the harp for Saul. And I remember, I think it was somewhere in the scripture where it talked about when King David was called to fight or called, or he came to Goliath, like Saul almost didn't recognize him. This is the guy that's playing. He loves him playing music. He serenades him. He calms him. And every day he spent 12 years. God anointed him with oil, by the prophet, youngest, child of his father, and anointed him. And for 12 years ended up serenading the king of the country, the first king, Saul, for 12 years in a harp. I think it's 12 years. You guys, the theologians, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. But anyways, many years, right? Many years played on the harp. And when he came to fight Goliath, when he came to fight the giant, and he stepped up on that, and they said that, he put on like Saul's like warrior stuff, and he was so tiny, and he ended up just going out there with like the sling, right? That's the whole story. The cool thing about that is God kept him invisible for 12 years. Why? He was killing everybody. Saul was trying to find who the prophet anointed. And the whole time he was in the palace serenading him. One of the most important people for the king, right? One of the most important people. Like he needed him to serenade him every day with his harp. I think that's really beautiful. And there was a time in my life where I asked God, okay, why? Like, okay, I want to get this job, or I want to do this thing. Why am I so invisible? Or give me some FaceTime with this leader so that I can do these things that are really on my heart that I know I can do and I can accomplish if you just give me a chance, right, to talk to them. And I'm sure there's so many young people who feel that way. If I could just meet this person, then I could get a job. Or if I could just meet this person, I could maybe pick their brain and learn something. Or maybe they know somebody that can help me, or they can hire me, or whatever, right? Yeah. So a lot of, I think, young people will like relate to that piece. And I would ask God, why are you not giving me the chance, or why are you making me invisible? And what I felt at that time, a little bit right after that time, is I was reading and I was remembering that, like, also just like God gave, King David the shield, his goal was only to be on offense. His goal was only to use his sling to defeat the giant, right? Not a sword, not a gun, nothing, just a sling. What he's used to, the resources in which God had already given him, which he was an expert in, right? So use the resources that God has given you. If that's Abraham, if that's a friend, if that's a colleague, if that's a mother, a father, a child, whatever that is for you, it's like use the gifts that God has given you and go on offense, meaning take action, take one step after another, and understand that God is the shield, his universal, grace or covering is, and even if you don't want to look at it from a spiritual sense, or like I'm not saying this from a religious perspective, I'm using it more as a metaphor or analogy, is being invisible allows you to go on offense untainted, unrestricted, unstopped, right? And that's like really powerful. And I think when we take that into the African context is, in one sense, it's like, oh, don't we matter? Like you said, I love that. It was so honest. It's like the true feeling, right? Don't we matter? We have to matter, you know, like Black Lives Matter and like the whole like activity, right? Where did that come from? It's like, we need to matter. Please, someone see me, right?
Yeah.
And just like that, it's you're invisible and you're hidden. That hidden or invisibility is actually protection. It's protection. And wouldn't you position yourself and operate very differently if you knew that that cloak was actually protection rather than not being seen?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It gives you the sense of like warmth.
Absolutely.
It gives you the sense of comfort, stability, right? So I think that's how I see it. It's that invisibility is power. We need to, when we see different things, that's why I say don't pay attention to the news, because the news is the hand that's waving here. What we need to be doing is, what are the things that are going to prepare us for the future? What is our individual commercial agriculture? You know, commercial making the wheat and the flour that we can't import from Ukraine anymore. What is that for us individually? What can we be doing to prepare ourselves for today, for tomorrow? And what are those actions? And if you start taking those steps of actions, you're going to be blessed because the invisibility is protection. It's not to hurt you. It's not to harm you. It's not to ensure that you have less resources, but it's there for you to have vision. If you didn't see all those cars like lined up without gas, would you have an awareness of it? No. Just like in America, you don't see all of that. You don't see that physical vision reminder on a daily. Yeah, you might see some prices increase in certain areas. There's that. And it's being, managed. The market, they're managing those markets to try to bring that down so Americans aren't as impacted. But you don't see that physical line, and it's happening, right? You do, but it's not as present, and it's not as vivid, and it's not as instant as it is like in an emerging market, an emerging area like in Africa. And so the book, I wrote it like 2 years ago.
Yeah, I'm not.
I know. I'm reading the book. The book, I wrote it 2 years ago, and it's called The Unexpected Global Shift. We've chatted about it before.
Yeah.
And the reason why it's unexpected is because it's the invisible population, it's the invisible growth, it's the invisible networking and businesses and people, and that are investing in themselves, that are being challenged, that are playing the harp, for 12 years, and those seeds are being sown and are being cultivated, and by the time people really see it, it's going to be already there, right? It's already a seed that's been sprouted, and it's a full oak tree. Well, anybody can know the oak tree or the big, large trees are powerful and big and strong, but can you see it when it's just a sprout or when it's still under the soil being cultivated and being grown? So that's really the book. The book is taking a look at history and taking a look at global shifts that happen, and how do those global shifts, what are the trends in them? What do they teach us? And how do they get duplicated? So it's almost going to be a book that also has kind of like a playbook, a guide. So you can take those different shifts, and I'll take you through different shifts and how each of those shifts completely repeat itself, how they recycle. There's going to be something specifically around energy shifts, and that's obviously fuel, but also our individual energy. How does our energy go up and down? And just like that's a cycle in our 24-hour cycle, where we need to have a time of a rest and a time of energy and activity and a time to kind of refuel ourselves, is the same thing in economies, and same things in how we look at history and how trade and countries are growing and shifting, and what they've used to do that. And really just the the population growth and how you create that connectivity. And so all roads, lead to Africa. Ultimately, after the cat's out of the bag, that's the ultimate point of the story. But it's not your regular economy type of book.
All right.
It has that obviously as a foundation, but it's also like a self-help book. It is a playbook, meaning something that you can take and you can look at your ideas, look at your business, say, okay, how does it move amongst the shifts that are kind of framed here? And so I'm really excited about it, and it'll be coming soon.
Amazing. So, first of all, what does it take to someone from the US to care about Africa, to care about Ethiopia, and analyze issues within the continent and write a book about a continent, Africa? And the other thing is, I remember when we had our first conversation in this podcast and working on the thumbnail of the whole thing, there is that thing that says not American enough, not Ethiopian enough. So are we really inclining to Ethiopia or the Africa part of it? Because most of the things that you were talking about, you were mentioning, are about Africa, about Ethiopia, about the continent. And I see, I don't have the confusion. I don't have that confusion, but my audience may have that confusion. But you are educated in a university in the US, worked for big banks in the US, including JP Morgan and the others. Why care about this continent this much and be actually pushed maybe or wanting to write a book about a continent?
The book really isn't for, It's actually a challenging question for me because I didn't write the book to be like an African book. So I didn't want it to be like, when you walk into the bookstore, and if you guys have ever went to like a Barnes and Nobles or one of these bookstores in the US, particularly for that market, if you write a book that's like on Africa, it's like particularly like in the little Africa, they have like a little like one bookshelf of like all the African books. And who goes there? The people who are specifically wanting to read a book on Africa, right?
Yeah.
Well, this wasn't a book on Africa. This was like a global book. And it was a book to kind of show that you talk about the invisible population or the unexpectancy. We don't expect certain things to come out of Africa. We had, our guest here that came with us, Farouk, and, to see him interact with the city and just be so surprised, like, wow, like everyone thinks that Africa is like a bush and whatever. Like people still think that that's like 20, 30 years ago. It's not. It's very relevant. And it's not racist. I think this idea that people are like, oh, everyone who thinks like that is right. Why would you not think of that? There is no other images. So what would you know what to expect? You would only expect what you've seen on movies, what you've seen in different images, what people around you would show you, right? So the whole aspect is that this is a global book. The book happens to be talking about the rise of Africa and the economic parallels or the economic shifts that have happened other places in the world, like China, India, and other places, where you see vast population growth, you see trade growing, you see the diaspora connecting, you see a service industry, a technology industry, innovation. And it's the same playbook. Different angles, different strategies, like arguably China and India are going to be different strategies, right? However, the shifts are pretty similar. And how that shift happens, like how the story plays out, we're watching that unfold. But I think that the whole point of it is Africa doesn't have to be for Africa only, And why? Why is Africa always for Africa only? And I think that we need to be a little bit more open in that conversation and open in that interactivity, because nobody says Paris is only for French. Like Paris is for the world, London is for the world, New York is for the world, right? And you can see that in China and India also expanding that global reach that anybody and everyone should go there. So, right? So I think that that's the aspect. I think that that's also what's going to change in the coming years. And I think that that change is going to be unexpected because there's so many unknowns still on Africa and what's here, the opportunities that are here, the talent that's here, the resources that are here within Africans themselves. Because of the way in which we consume information, we may not be able to see fully who we are internally within the continent, but also who we are seeing on the outside. So,
okay.
Yeah.
The whole point of today's conversation is so that we can talk about geopolitics, especially what is happening in the Middle East affecting everywhere in the world. I mean, we're feeling, the poverty of the people living in Ethiopia and faraway places because of the cost they have to incur for fuel. And we talked about other nations in the world feeling it that way.
Yeah.
I feel like there might be very crucial points that I'm not asking you about, but what do you think is the most important thing in the whole thing happening in that part of the world affecting other places in this world?
Yeah. I food, hands down. I think that the impact on the food supply is very scary, concerning. I think that preparation is necessary. I think that as a community, a lot of times we want to diminish our problems. Just like I told you, people eating like olo. They're hungry, but when you see them out, they're dressed nice. Same thing in the US, by the way. The people that are struggling, they dress really nice. They drive a fancy car, so you can't see the struggle. A part of that is really commendable. It means that, hey, like people fast, you're not supposed to look like you're starving, because the whole aspect is to kind of like, sacrifice and to keep you focused on service and focus on your faith. I think the same thing is true here. I think a part of it's commendable, but the other side of it is you may not necessarily see the struggle fully. And the whole aspect of conflict and sudden changes is preparation and what you do to, come together and help each other. And I actually think that the strength isn't in hiding the struggle. I know culturally we do that. When somebody's sick, you find out like after they passed, oh, somebody's sick. Did they already pass away? Like I have to ask my parents now, someone they call and they're crying about something. Are they really in the hospital or did they already pass away? Tell me the truth. And it's like, it sounds really dark, but the whole aspect of that is what? Like, you're going to save me 24 hours. Then you're going to tell me tomorrow that the person already passed away. Something about that just feels wrong. I know it's culturally appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
I actually think that when we shift this culture, meaning our ancestors didn't tell us to do that. Somewhere down the line, the hiding ourselves became a way of survival. Hiding became a way of making sure that people don't see you messed up, see you, broken, see you struggling with your health. What happens in that scenario? Nobody was able to give you money. Nobody was able to call you. Nobody was able to pray for you during that time. You passed away alone without your community. Starving? Why? Isn't that the whole point of having the community in the first place, having the family in the first place, having the friendship in the first place? So I think that aspect, I really want to challenge our culture in that aspect. I think that in this time, hiding the realities of the regional conflict and the impact it can have in Ethiopia and people all over the world is there to not let people be afraid. But I actually feel like we won't do that. I think that we'll rise to the occasion. And I think that we will build our cities. We will build our businesses. We will help our community, because that's what happens when you tell each other, right? What's the biggest thing, the biggest event? You see everybody show up. Hazan aralla.
Yeah.
Like, so somebody passes away. Everybody, people, our family go. They don't even know the person who passed away.
Yes.
But they show up, right? So then, what does that tell you? That tells me that they would show up if that person needed them alive as well. We don't think that way. We only come to mourn. No. We need to come there to do too. We need to come there to act. We need to come there to support. So the most important thing to know is not to hide the truth or be in fear of what could be or what's going to happen. I actually think people are prepared. People are ready to handle, and people are much more resilient and much stronger and thoughtful and creative than people give them credit for. And so from a leadership perspective, get everybody, tell everybody, and allow everyone to be a part of the solution. And that's when you're going to see less you versus me, and you're going to see less of that. Why? Because you have a common goal. Sometimes countries pick fights to bring the country closer. That's a known fact. If you look in history and read history books with wars and different conflicts, it's because usually those things happen when the country itself, the community itself, has divided too much. So if you have an external enemy, then internally you come closer together. Right?
Yeah.
So same thing is true. So I think that the piece here is identify what's going on, allow people to be a part of that solution, and therefore you now have a shared purpose and a shared solution to work on together that I think will be far outreach what you could come in a room by yourself.
All right. Today in the morning, I've been having this conversation with Aman, our common friend. So we were talking about geopolitics in a way of addressing, and talking about the Middle East problem, and he mentioned the Southeast Asian countries and Africa emerging. And we talked about different things, Europe, the US and Canada and other countries in the North America. And we were really emphasizing on Africa and Southeast Asian countries dominating what is to come in the world. But one concern we had was human capital. In Africa, in Ethiopia in particular, we struggle to find people. We talk about AI, we talk about this and that, but we struggle to find people with a fuller understanding of what is happening in the world, be it in regards to geopolitics or other things. So I sometimes lose hope. I know that demographically speaking, we're good. Africa is okay. I know that we have young population that is really strong, that is productive. But do you really believe that we're there and we can actually achieve what is expected of us, given the whole things that you mentioned, like Africa is coming, or the countries within the continent are expected to maybe shoot the sling or do whatever. I have that hesitation.
So, well, one, what's expected of us, or let's from a continent perspective, is nothing, right? Not much is expected, internally and externally. So even when I say like Africa Rising, I don't think that's like a common belief. I think it's a unique belief. I think that maybe people might say that as like a talking point or a tagline, but do people really believe we can collaborate equally with world powers? No. That's the answer. I think the answer is no. That's not an expectation. I do think, though, that the answer to that and how that will be revealed is really going to be more about how we see ourselves. So it's not about what we achieve. I think it's more about, do we think we should be collaborating with U.S.? Should we be working on global trade policies with the U.S.? Ethiopia. Let's just use Ethiopia as an example. Absolutely. Do we think that we need to have the entire continent involved to partner with the U.S.? Why? Because the GDP is small? Because what is the basis of it? Is it population? Is it income? The UK is a really, really small nation, right?
Yeah.
But it ruled the whole world from there at one point in time, right?
Yeah.
So is it really the size of the country or the nation or the people? No. It really is the unifying mission and the unifying belief system of the people that actually allow them to achieve something. It's not where you were educated. It's not the resources you have. It's not any of those things. Even the American dream itself, Americans may not even have the best education system, the best opportunities anymore. But you couldn't tell an American that. You can't tell an American that like China's beating America or India's beating America or any other place. I'm giving you those as examples, right? This is the ones that people dialogue about in geopolitics and global, economic type of conversations. It's the American is the American. The American is the cowboy. There's nothing more proud than an American. When an American sees an American flag, there's a lot of pride in what that flag represents, what being American represents, especially on the global stage. Let's internally, we might fight with each other, just like Ethiopia might fight with each other internally. But on the global stage, you're gonna respect that you're gonna respect that blue passport. And we have a common belief system in that. And therefore, we believe, it doesn't matter if we put a man on the moon or not, which I don't believe we did. It doesn't matter. Do the Hollywood setup, show the guy on the moon. We're like, okay, we haven't been to the moon since. That's kind of weird. I think Elon said this years ago. He said, if we had put a man on the moon, I would have been to the moon already. Kind of makes sense, just saying. Considering that he's flown more spaceships in the air, in the universe, in the space and than anybody else. But, that's a sidebar conversation. But you just got to believe that you are. You don't actually have to be.
No, right.
And that's the difference, because you only shoot for what you believe. If I know that if I can reach the ceiling and I can touch the ceiling and I know I can do that, eventually I will do that. Physically, I may not be able to do that today, but I will eventually, my physical capability will reach my mental and spiritual capability because I believe I can do it.
Isn't that delusion?
No. And honestly, that's kind of my word of the year, actually. My word of the year, which I don't know, some people do this. I don't know other people do this, but I have a word of the year. My word of the year is be delusional.
For real?
Yeah. Because the more delusional you are and what you can achieve, the more likely you are to achieve it. There's nobody that's ever really done anything crazy in the sense that unbelievable, like Steve Jobs, you were talking about him the other day, Elon, like him or not, the belief system to create something or to achieve something that hasn't been seen around you has to have some level of delusion, How else are you going to achieve something great that hasn't been achieved before? How are you going to invent something that hasn't been invented before? It's you have to have some level of delusion. Did Albert Einstein have delusion? Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. You have to have some level of delusion. You have to believe in something you haven't seen yet. You have to it has to come into your intuition.
We're going to make that the tagline or something.
Be delusional? No, absolutely.
People will be commenting a lot on that, I know, for a fact. Okay, it's all right. Okay.
Yeah.
Leaving all this thing going out and talking about this conversation with your family members or one of your friends, what is the one thing that you would say Abraham should have asked about that thing but didn't?
Oh, that's a good one. I think a question, and I wouldn't say necessarily you had to ask me because I don't think I have the full answer, is really like, who does Ethiopia want to be? Who does Africa want to be? You know, it's like you see certain things like, oh, that's the new like Dubai in Africa. You see people say that a lot of times with Addis, and that's cool and everything. But is that really who we are? Is that who we're trying to be? What are we building? And that's something that I ask myself as far as we talk about Africa and the way it's growing and where it's supposed to go. It's like there's something that has to be rooted in the fabric and who you are. That doesn't mean that you can't like evolve and be something new and different that our ancestors hadn't necessarily thought about. But, you know, there also was leadership and trade and the birthplace of civilization that happened right here. And so what does that both being the beginning and the end feel like? Does that make sense? It's like, and I say beginning and the end, the alpha and the omega, not just from a spiritual perspective, but it is real. And it's like, you know, you don't want to be the in-between. Do you want to be the Africa Dubai? I think it's nice from a perspective of our city is really beautiful. So I think from that perspective, we can be proud of that. But I think the longer goal, the longer question I may have is, who is Africa trying to be? And what would feel right? And I think that we might not have an answer for that today. And we might have an answer for that today. But I feel like that's, I think, who we're building and that's who we're creating. It's like, what does that look like? What does the cosmopolitan city of 2030 in the continent look like? You know, how we're collaborating with other world leaders individually as nations and as a continent, how do we lead differently? What does that leadership look like? You know, how do we sit at this global stage and what perspective do we add? You know, it's kind of like when they bring like the elders when there's like a conflict and there needs to be like a mediation. Us sitting at the table and let's say we're the elders, the mediation. How are we mediating? What is the spirit we bring into the table? What's the missing conversation? Like if Africa or Ethiopia, as an example, said, okay, I want to be at that table today. What are we bringing to that table? Not as far as resource or anything like that. What spirit are we bringing to the table? Who are we trying to be? Who do we feel like people should have? What type of leadership? What type of voice are we bringing to the table? And that's super critical. It's got to be delusional. A part of it has to be delusional, but a bigger part of it is like, you know, what's the thing that's grounding us in that? You know, not just to be at the table, but when we come to the table, what do we bring? And not as a form of physical resources or cash or money. That's all a fragment of our imagination. We created this little piece of paper and then we gave it the worth. So is the paper worth anything or is it the worth we gave it? You know?
Okay. All right. But this is my last question. And this is something that...
I thought that was your last question.
No. This is something that bothers me a lot.
Okay. What bothers Abraham?
Listen, thinking about the future,
yeah.
I think about the leaders that we'll be having in the future. And I don't know if I'm wrong about this, I can be corrected anytime, but I don't think young people are reading. I don't think they seek for wisdom. Virtue is not valued that much. And a lot that has been a big thing before is not big thing today.
True.
So clout is everything that people think about and follow or saying other things. I lose faith in the whole thing. How can you make me believe in the coming generation?
Well, I am not an avid reader. So.
You believe in wisdom.
I believe in wisdom, but maybe not your traditional wisdom, meaning like what I say is what I challenge you as far as like losing faith or thinking, oh, what's going to be next was we're not prepared. It's more the feeling you're feeling, right? I say, unless thinking about the traditional ways of gaining information, it's more about where is our spirit? Where is our energy level? What are we putting in? Are we focusing on the things that we don't have? Are we focusing on the things that make us upset? Are we focusing on the things that are limiting us? Or are we focusing on the things that are not? So for you, it's in order to have faith, you have to have faith. Meaning like the problem, the solution is in your problem. The problem of not having faith is actually having faith and focusing on your faith. And that actually makes you forget the things that you're not faithful in. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So I know that sounds like really like, woo, whatever, but it is really serious and it's really profound. And it's something that like I have to remind myself almost on a daily basis, because it's very easy every day to wake up and think about what's not working. Just like I said, when we talked about being invisible, why can't I get to this table? Or why can't I meet this person? Or why can't I get this visibility I need to meet this next version or goal that I have? It's understanding that I need to focus on where I am right now, what I have right now, what resources are around me right now, being present with where I am, and knowing and focusing on the things that I do have. Because that's the 99%. The 1% is the problems. No matter how big they are, the 1% is really what's taking up the majority of our focus, because that's the 1% that's not working. So it's easy to focus on it. So every time you're thinking about not having faith, there's understanding like, I'm not an avid reader. I've never been an avid reader in my entire life. Seeking wisdom, yes, I'm not saying that I don't read now and read things there when I'm curious, but a lot of times I'm just talking to people, trying to understand, asking them a question, looking at something, paying attention. Most of the wisdom comes from being present, just being present in where we are and not thinking about what's good or what's bad or what's not working, you know? And so I think that that's it. I think that like the future is going to be great. The future is going to be great. The future is going to be powerful. The future is going to be completely unexpected.
Wow.
Back to the book, but you know, completely unexpected, because when you're focusing on like gratitude and oh my gosh, you know, like thank you God for this day. Thank you for this conversation. Thank you, you know, for all of that. It's like, you know, I could be thinking right now, I'm really hungry. I'm having a lunch or dinner. You know what I mean? I could be thinking about that.
Yeah.
You know, but it's like I'm engaged and present in this conversation.
Absolutely.
And so therefore, I don't even feel the hunger. You know, I actually don't feel any hunger pains anymore.
Amazing.
So it's kind of like that aspect, right? It's like what we focus on magnifies.
Absolutely.
So if we focus on the things that like are that we're grateful for and that we have faith in, that will also magnify, and it will outweigh the 1%. It'll outweigh all the problems, because all of that energy will be able to be sourced to kind of create the actions and the steps that need to kind of bring you forward into what you're excited and you're faithful in. You know.
Lulite, I love the whole thing about this conversation. I learned a lot. It made me think about different things and see things in different ways. Made me fall in love with Africa and feel proud about being Ethiopian in Africa. And thank you for coming.
Good. Always going to be proud.
All right.
And delusional.
Delusional is the word of the day.
Delusional, crazy, whatever you want to call it. But yeah,
All right.
Thank you, Abrish.
Thank you so
appreciate
much.
you.
All right.